Greetings to you, music lovers, thrill seekers, conversationalists all across the fruited plain. Time once again for Broadcast Excellence, hosted by me, America's real anchorman, America's truth detector, and doctor of democracy, all combined into one harmless, lovable little fuzzball right here on the EIB network. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, feel free to do that. The address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Hurricane Florence continues to churn toward the Carolinas. Looks like the latest forecast track has it hitting landfall near Wilmington, North Carolina, as a Category 3. The danger of this hurricane, besides just the fact it's a Category 3 and you have the wind and the rain, is it's supposed to slow down significantly after reaching landfall. Now they've got it speeding up a little bit, but if they're right on this forecast, it's a significant flooding event, and a number of people are trying to figure out what to do. Stay, ride it out, get out, what have you. You know, this is one of the, and by the way, this is made to order for the climate change, global warming crowd. This is, they tell us, one of the most powerful hurricanes this far north ever. And, of course, why is that? Well, that would be sea surface temperature. And why is that warmer than... There you go, climate change. It's being accepted as a non-argumentative fact. I don't care what meteorologist you watch or read, website or what have you. All of this seems to be acknowledged fact. So we're keeping an eye on that. We have exhaustive experience with hurricanes here at the Southern Command, and we have great empathy for anybody who is in the pathway of one of these things. You remember the hurricane that hit Houston? It stopped shortly after hitting landfall, and it just, I mean, you saw people with their speedboats and rowboats on the streets in front of their homes. And this is one of the things that has everybody alarmed for the Carolinas, not to mention which, if you get far enough into the state, you go far enough west in North Carolina, you have mountains. Did you know that people in South Florida go to North Carolina for the summer? I mean, I didn't know that until I moved, even after I moved. What do you mean, North Carolina? Isn't that a humid hellhole? No, Rush, you get up in the mountains and it's gorgeous up there. Tom Fazio's built some golf courses. You ought to go. Well, I haven't, but a lot of people do. That elevation with this kind of rain is going to cause torrential mudslides and just water pouring down those mountains into the valleys below. Now, also, these things have become very politicized, as you know, folks. Hurricanes and hurricane forecasting is like much else that the left has gotten its hands on, and they politicize these things. And for those of you asking, what's the politics of a hurricane? Climate change is the politics of a hurricane, and the forecast and the destruction, potential doom and gloom is all to heighten the belief in climate change. And my experience is that the storms are bad. You know, you don't want to get into arguments over degrees. But look at the latest hurricane that was headed for Oahu. Do you remember the forecasting about that one? The first thing it was going to take out the Big Island. You have Hilo on the northwestern side of the northeastern side. Then you got Kailua Kona on the eastern side of the Big Mountain Range in the middle of the Big Island. Do you know it could be 85, 90 degrees on the beach? Well, it's not beach, it's lava rock. And up at the mountain where the telescopes are, it could be snowing in 20 degrees on the Big Island of Hawaii. It was going to level that out. Then it decided to go a little bit further. What would it be? I guess, northwest. Then it was going to level Oahu. And I have a bunch of friends in Oahu because I've been going there a lot. And they were taking it seriously. I talked to my buddy Rush. I know what you say about these things. I know, but I got my friends at the Hurricane Center. I know Mr. Hawaii, by the way. Mike Hartley's his name. And I was talking to him. Everybody thinking this is the big one. This is it. And, of course, it fizzled. It just dissipated before it hit Oahu and Honolulu, and nobody saw it. Nobody saw it coming 4 hours out. There was not one forecast. There was not one indication the thing was going to fall apart, but it did. It went from a what would have been for Honolulu, I mean, a devastating event to a tropical storm with basically just a moderate amount of rain. My point is that nobody saw it, and this is not a criticism, it's just hard to predict these things. Nobody saw it dissipating. They had it staying at full strength all the way through, leveling Oahu. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be the case with Hurricane Florence, that it's going to magically dissipate before it hits the coast, but I'm going to rely on intelligence guided by experience, and hope that it's not nearly as bad as what is being forecast. This is also the anniversary of September 11th, 9/11, 2001. And as happens each September 11th, there are massive ceremonies in New York, at the Pentagon, and out in Pennsylvania, where the 3 hijacked aircraft plowed into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field. The president went to Pennsylvania. We'll have audio soundbites of his speech in mere moments. I remember the first 9/11. I was talking to America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani. I said, Mr. Mayor, don't misunderstand me on this, but are we going to do this every year? Are we going to have ceremonies where we spend the whole day reciting the names of the dead and having a day-long remembrance? Oh yeah, we have to. We have to. And I said, well, okay. I understand it. Again, I have some friends who lost children, family members, in the World Trade Center at 9/11. I fully understand the emotion. I just we watch it, and it for me, it brings back a wide array of memories. I was on my way to the last ever Warren Buffett charity fundraising golf tournament in Nebraska. And I forget where we weren't there yet. And all of a sudden the pilots came back and said, we gotta turn around and get down as soon as we can. We got to get down within a certain time frame. We're not going to be able to get back home. The closest we're going to be able to get is probably an hour out of home, the nearest airport. That air traffic control was shutting everything down. Now, back then, didn't have television on airplanes. I had no idea. We're just getting reports from phone calls and so forth. And even those were rudimentary, that the World Trade Center had fallen down. I didn't see any video of what actually happened until 3 hours later. After getting home, I was also in the midst of losing my hearing, and so I wasn't able to understand 80% of what people were telling me. And it wasn't until I got back here about 15 minutes before 3 Eastern that I first saw a video of what had happened. And, my reaction, I'm sure the same as everybody else, was shocked, stunned, disbelief. How? I mean, I thought when I found out who the culprits were, understood the why. And I'll never forget the next morning. For some reason, I'm driving into work, and it's at dawn. And it's just a gorgeous dawn. I'm driving in. The Atlantic Ocean is right outside my left window. The sun had been up for a very few minutes. It was peaceful, idyllic. It was gorgeous. And I couldn't help but think, why would anybody want to do what they did? Why would it didn't compute. Intellectually, politically, yeah, of course it made all kinds of sense. Intellectually, it didn't make any sense. Emotionally, didn't make any sense. And then all of the reality began to settle in for a lot of people the next day and the days following. Now, where are we 17 years later? Where we are is, among other things, Joe Scarborough on PMSNBC today. And I very rarely mention this network because I feel myself partly to blame for them having an audience. We used to play audio sound bites of them all the time, and I think I helped create curiosity about them. So I banned them. I banned all audio sound bites, a bunch of other things. And we occasionally lift the ban. But you hear what Scarborough said today? Scarborough said today that Donald Trump represents a greater threat than the 9/11 hijackers and terrorists. Now, how are you supposed to process that? What in the world are you supposed to do with that? What has happened to people? What has happened to Scarborough? Scarborough used to be suck-up number one to Donald Trump after he was elected. You couldn't keep him out of Mar-a-Lago. He'd show up wanting to be admitted, having a party with Trump. I don't know what happened here. But how in the world, his theory is, well, the 9/11 hijackers united America, and Trump is dividing America. So therefore, Trump poses a greater threat than the 9/11 hijackers. Seriously. By the way, how long did the unity after 9/11 last, do you think? What is your memory of how long the unity lasted? It didn't even last a week. It was inside of a week that the Democrat Party began to openly criticize George W. Bush for not doing anything in retaliation. Then they started making fun of him for remaining in the classroom, in Florida, where he was at the time of the attacks. He was reading about goats to a bunch of eighth-year-olds or some such thing. I don't know, maybe it was a goat book. I don't know what it was. And they started making fun of him for not leaving immediately after he'd been told. And then they made fun of him for being a coward for not flying straight back to Washington because he didn't want to be in the line of fire. And then Peter Jennings got on ABC and started lamenting, after Bush's first remarks, some presidents are just good at this and some aren't. And, of course, Peter Jennings was suggesting that what we really needed was Bill Clinton to calm and unite the nation after 9/11, that George W. Bush was just totally inept and incompetent. So what was all this unity that supposedly happened after? What unity did the 9/11 hijackers promote? For crying out loud. I have another question. Where's Carl Bernstein? Today, Bob Woodward's book hits. Woodward's making a lot of what he usually does, allegations made by people whose names we don't know. In fact, I heard Chris Steyerwalt on the Fox News channel today say, yeah, Woodward does this with every president, any big deal. He somehow gets into the White House, he gets in there and people talk to him, and then he writes a book. Well, how does that happen? If everybody knows that Woodward's going to manufacture stuff, why does every White House let him in? Oh, by the way, we have the soundbites coming. Do you know that more and more people are now beginning to suggest that New York Times op-ed was actually written by the New York Times, exactly as I, your host, mentioned yesterday? That I wouldn't be surprised if nobody wrote it other than some editorial board member at the New York Times. And there's some people now suggesting that could be the case. And that's just another sign that I'm back. Show prep for the rest of the media and all of that. But my question, where's Carl Bernstein? So you got Woodward out there, and he's got his new book. And while most of official Washington is applauding and falling all over themselves in celebration, there are some people, mainly those Woodward has written about, saying it isn't true. Well, where is Bernstein vouching for his old partner? Woodward and Bernstein, of course, the heroes of Watergate for the Washington Post. Where's Bernstein? Why isn't Bernstein out there standing up for his buddy? Why isn't Bernstein out there vouching for his buddy Bob Woodward? Oh, that's right. Bernstein's had to go in hiding here because he put his byline to a phony fake story on CNN that CNN still won't retract after everybody else has. This is the Lanny Davis, sorry, I got it wrong story. Woodward and CNN have not retracted it because they got to protect, or Bernstein and CNN haven't retracted it because they got to protect Bernstein's reputation. But wouldn't you think, what? Oh, you think Bernstein and Woodward are no longer buddies? That there was well, maybe you telling me Bernstein wants Woodward to flame? No. That even if there's a personal animus, none of which I know to be the case, but even if there were, the issue here of destroying Trump would certainly preclude any personal fight or animosity Woodward and Bernstein might ever be having. So there's that. Folks, the big news today outside of all of this. This is really big news, and like every other bit of big news, nobody is going to hear about it. You may have seen references to headlines, Peter Strzok, Stroke, Smirk, and the paramour, Lisa Page. More texts have been discovered and released, and the texts indicate that Strzok, Stroke, Smirk and Lisa Page coordinated the leaking of news data to the media in order to get it reported so that could then be used in a FISA warrant application to spy on Carter Page. I've looked at some of the stories. They're really kind of difficult to follow unless you are a seasoned, trained veteran like I am. So let me just nutshell tell you what this story is. The latest texts reveal that Strzok, Stroke, Smirk and Lisa Page were coordinating leaks to the Washington Post, leaks of investigative data that wasn't true. Remember back 18 months ago, every day there was a news story, intelligence sources say, blah, 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 collusion, Trump and Russia. And everybody was led to believe that we're getting close to the bombshell being delivered. What turns out, all of those leaks from the so-called intelligence community were coming from the FBI. They were coming from Strzok, Stroke, Smirk, and Lisa Page. The FBI was leaking that stuff supposedly from the intelligence community. They wanted to plant all of that, including the story of Carter Page and Trump-Russia collusion, so that they can then go to the FISA court and say, look, Judge, it's even in the media. We need to look into it. Well, they put it in the media. It's no different than how they put the idea in Papadopoulos' head that the Russians had a bunch of Hillary emails. Got to take a break. We'll be back.
You're listening.
Experience that people that don't live in hurricane paths really don't get invested in them, don't care much. But I'm telling you, you should. The potential damage from this one is off the charts, which I'll get to in just a second. But I want to share a headline with you here from CNBC. Florence could hit with a punch not seen in more than 60 years. Really? Well, what was going on 60 years ago that caused such a, massive punch? Florence could hit with a punch not seen in more than 60 years. So something must have been going on 60 or more years ago to cause the massive punch that happened then. Just curious what it was. And try this headline, folks. Hurricane risks include toxic sludge and lagoons of pig manure. Let me tell you what this headline is. The media is, as we speak, getting ready to portray Hurricane Florence as Donald Trump's Katrina. Do not doubt me. No matter what happens in the aftermath here, Trump is going to be blamed for this hurricane and its aftermath, and they're going to be calling it Trump's Katrina, even maybe before it hits. You watch. I'm not going to do a minute-by-minute hurricane update here thing, but for people in the line of fire of this thing, believe me, don't doubt me, every morsel of information matters. It helps determine whether they're going to leave, whether they're going to stay, any number of things. The latest is that it's slowing down and is now going to not make landfall till Friday. Now, that could be good if it dumps a lot of its strength over the ocean. If it dumps a lot of rain over the ocean, if it actually stalls over the ocean, would it be a great thing? As a hurricane expert and veteran, that would be fabulous. If it dumped its load offshore, if it stalled there, and in the process weakened, that would be pretty good thing to hope for. 9/11, I'm wondering, ladies and gentlemen, if there be any NFL players or other celebrities today kneeling anywhere well, you hope not? Well, I mean, but what a day to speak up for social justice. 9/11, New York reading the names of those who died. Pentagon ditto to protest the flag. And who is it that died? In many cases, it was policemen and firemen of all races, sexes, creeds, religions, planets, you name it. So don't know if Nike has a special commercial to hit today. Probably would have heard about it by now if they did. As I mentioned, President Trump went to Shanksville, Pennsylvania. This is where Flight 93 was commandeered by the passengers and flown into the ground. It was due to head back to Washington. The believed target was either the White House or Capitol Hill. But the passengers bravely took control of the plane, got in a fight with the terrorists aboard, and successfully crashed it into a field of western Pennsylvania, which is where President Trump was today. I have to tell you, his speech has been getting rave reviews from across the spectrum. We have two sound bites. Here they are.
A piece of America's heart is buried on these grounds, but in its place has grown a new resolve to live our lives with the same grace and courage as the heroes of Flight 93. This field is now a monument to American defiance. This memorial is now a message to the world. America will never, ever submit to tyranny.
And then, Cookie there left the applause in there. Good, I understand why. Next bite, Trump says that he will always do everything he can to prevent terrorists from striking, from succeeding.
Since September 11th, nearly 5.5 million young Americans have enlisted in the United States Armed Forces. Nearly 7,000 service members have died facing down the menace of radical Islamic terrorism. Today, we also think of the more than 200,000 service members now serving overseas. And we think of every citizen who protects our nation at home, including our state, local, and federal law enforcement. These are great Americans. These are great heroes. We honor and thank them all. As Commander-in-Chief, I will always do everything in my power to prevent terrorists from striking American soil.
So those are two sound bites from President Trump's remarks today at the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. By the way, the president has canceled, the Trump campaign has canceled the rally for Thursday night in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, my hometown, because of the forecast of the hurricane to make landfall about that time. Don't know if they're going to reschedule it or not, but if you're planning on going and you haven't heard, it's been, I don't know, canceled or postponed, but it's not going to happen on Thursday. Now let's go to CNN. David Rodham Gergen said that this speech that Trump gave in Shanksville today, one of his best. You could almost forget the acrimony and the poison. Almost. Here's what he said.
Very thoughtful speech by the president. I think easily one of his best speeches. For a moment, Poppy, one could almost forget the chaos around us, the acrimony, the poison, and come together. And you can only hope that the president will navigate that course again, that he will understand that the kind of speech he gave today brings us back together and helps in that regard. And that if he will lead the way, maybe we can find our way to a better place as a nation.
Well, isn't that just peaches and cream? So what were they expecting Trump to do? Were they expecting him to say something he wishes different people had been on the plane? What were they expecting him to say? They were expecting Trump to be divisive. You know what this all is? This is David Rodham. If we could just come together. If the president could just, navigate that course again. What they're saying is if Trump could stop attacking us, if Trump could stop criticizing us, if Trump would stop criticizing the media, if Trump would stop criticizing the Washington establishment, why then everything would be fine? Well, of course it would. Because if Trump stops doing that, then it means they've neutered him. And that's, of course, what they would like. They would like a Trump who gives up the fight. That's what they like about every Republican that caves. A Republican that gives up the fight, gives up the battle, all in the name of unity and crossing the aisle and showing cooperation, proving that Washington can work. Of course, David Rodham Gergen would celebrate that. But what is inherent in that? What's inherent in it is that we can never be unified if the left is being criticized. We can never be unified if the media is being criticized, not attacked, just criticized. We can never be unified if our government is criticized. And this is what they're after. And it's remarkable, you know well as I do, how successful they have been in taming a whole bunch of Republicans throughout the years. Because, man, you know, having that kind of stuff said about you on TV or in the Washington Post, New York Times, that's seductive if you are a Republican. So Trump gives the speech. David Rodham Gergen says, attaboy, keep doing it like that. And who knows, we might even delay impeachment. Still going to get rid of you, but we might tone it down a little bit. Let's look at some of the news headlines here from the Associated Press. Trump to mark 17 years since September 11th at Pennsylvania Field. And what do you think the focus of this story is? The focus of this story is how Trump lied when he said he saw Muslims celebrating on 9/11. Do you remember that kerfuffle and controversy? During the presidential campaign, and even prior to it, Trump was famous for saying that in New Jersey he had seen a bunch of celebrating after 9/11. Trump was in fact, this is how they write it. Trump was in his Trump Tower penthouse 4 miles from the World Trade Center. He has a mixed history with 9/11, often using the terror attacks to praise the response of New Yorkers to the attack, but also making unsubstantiated claims about what he did and saw that day. Trump has said when talking about Muslims that thousands of people were cheering in Jersey City as the towers collapsed, but there's no evidence in news archives of mass celebrations there by Muslims. But of course, there is. And it's, interestingly, from the New Jersey Star-Ledger, which hates Trump. December 22nd, 2015 archives. Exclusive, some Jersey City Muslims did celebrate 9/11, cops and residents say. So this story is from 2015. That's 6 months after Trump announced. And they're savaging Trump for making it up. He didn't see it. This is an example of Trump racism, bigotry, and bias against our Muslim friends. And then they decided to look into it at the New Jersey Star-Ledger, and they found evidence. Trump was not lying about it. Yet the story today is how Trump continues to lie and make it up. That's the AP's version of the Trump story on 9/11. Now, there's this, too. Why the 9/11 hijackers still haven't faced a trial. They say the wheels of justice turn slowly, but now they've ground to a virtual halt 17 years after they helped murder nearly 3,000 innocent people. 5 9/11 suspects, including the avowed mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, have not faced trial. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty for all 5 men. They've attempted for years to try the case, but a constantly shifting venue, questions over coerced evidence, and the limitations of holding trials at Club Gitmo have slowed the case to a crawl. What do you mean trials? Well, I'm just going to shoot you straight. There's people to blame for this: Barack Hussein O. and Eric Holder. If you recall, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, this is the guy we waterboarded a bunch of times and got the truth out of him. He came out with everything, the planning, the stages, who did it, how they did it, everything, after he was waterboarded. Obama wanted a show trial in Manhattan. Obama and Eric Holder insisted on putting these confessions, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, aside so that there could be a show trial. And they wanted that trial to be in Manhattan. I don't know how many of you remember this, but I was livid when I heard this because I knew what this was going to be. You start a trial where these people are on trial, and you're giving them, because they have a right to mount a defense, you're giving them a United States federal courtroom to continue their diatribe against the United States. And I was asking myself, why in the world does the president of the United States, the Attorney General, want to afford these people that opportunity? And some people said, well, Rush, it's the best thing America could do to show how special we are. To even the most vicious of people, we offer the attempt at justice. We are fair. We are strong enough, we are big enough to allow them into a courtroom and let them rip us to shreds. That's who we are. Well, maybe with no context that might make sense, but within the context of everything going on at the time, it was a disastrous thing to do, and it was stopped. Holder wanted to do it, Obama too, in the worst way. But the bottom line is, it's 17 years later, and 5 of the masterminds have not been brought to trial, not been punished, other than they are incarcerated. But kind of shocking for a lot of people. You talk to people who've lost family at the World Trade Center. To this day, many of them, it's more than perplexed. They can't figure out why in the world. And when they hear anybody in our government talk about how we must be open-minded and we must not be critical of our militant Islamist friends, it drives them nuts. Drives them nuts. It still does. Back with more after this. Fastest 3 hours in media. I can't believe we're almost through the first hour, but we are. And we have a lot of people in line here want to weigh in on 9/11. So let's start in Cincinnati. This is Ron, and I'm glad you called, sir. Hi.
Rush, thank you for taking my call today. It's an honor and privilege to speak with you.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Hey, today we are remembering 17 years ago, 9/11, but almost as important, in 2012, 9/11, there was attacks on Benghazi.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you remember right before that, there was some brave people in Congress led by Michelle Bachmann who were asking some very serious questions of 5 different departments of the executive branch, what was going on with infiltration by the Muslim Brotherhood. And those people were chastised. Those 5 members of Congress were almost run out on a rail. And if you look at what was going on in the administration at that time, it was extremely believable that that kind of thing was going on. I'm hopeful that in Trump's administration that maybe we'll get to the bottom of that. And boy, wouldn't it be a great time to revisit those letters?
Well, let me tell you, you mentioned 9/11 Benghazi. I think this is a good thing to revisit because I don't think people remember this. On that day, let me get my embassy straight. I think it was our embassy in Cairo, or it might have been somewhere in Libya. Anyway, one of our embassies apologized. They issued an apology in the afternoon on September 11th, whatever the year was. We're talking about Benghazi, 2012. I remember hearing this. Apology for what? What are we apologizing for now? It turned out that that apology had been orchestrated from the State Department, Washington, as an advance move to blame this video that Obama and Hillary would later rely on as the reason why the Benghazi attack happened. We apologized before anything happened. Somebody goofed and released the official apology before the terrorists had taken any action. And so it looked like we were apologizing for our existence. We were apologizing for our policies, apologizing for this. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And then later in the day and night, Benghazi happened. And we were told that it was spontaneous. And it was because of a video that had been circulating on YouTube and elsewhere in the Middle East. And it was inciting Islamists to riot. And that the apology was cited and so forth. The whole thing was a scam because it was known that Benghazi was going to happen because it was a terror attack that was planned. It was known somewhat in advance. And of course, you know the story of Benghazi. We didn't do anything to help the people fighting in the middle of it to get them out or any of that because we didn't want to provoke and we didn't want to launch airplanes and missiles from the nearest base in Italy, if I'm recalling this right. I may have some of the few details wrong here, but overall, this was the prelude to what happened at Benghazi on 9/12, and that apology from our State Department. I think it was Cairo, but it might have been from our installation. I don't know if we even had one in Libya. Anyway, I'm long. I got to take a break, but I'll figure this out. Back in just a second, folks. Don't go away. Yeah, it was the embassy in Cairo, the State Department embassy, our embassy, that issued this apology. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and nothing had happened. And I said, well, it's not unusual for Obama to apologize for America, but what is this about? And then fact checkers protecting Obama later said it really wasn't an apology. It was just a statement. It was an apology to set up the blaming of the video for what was to happen later at the Benghazi complex. This is the kind of stuff that starts happening. Latest Hurricane Florence update. New reports from NOAA aircraft show sharks have been lifted into the hurricane. So those of you in the target path in North Carolina, South Carolina, in addition to the pig manure, in addition to the slop, in addition to the floods, in addition to the cars rolling around on the waters in front of your house, in addition to the mudslides and the landslides, now you might end up with a shark in your front yard. I'm telling you right, you think I'm making this up? This appeared somewhere. Florence now contains sharks. I'm telling you. You want to tell me this story is not true? That this is one thing I say. Let me find the headline here. Put it at the bottom of the stack. Hurricane risks include toxic sludge and lagoons of pig manure. I'm telling you, they're getting ready to call this Donald Trump's Katrina. How many times did they, after George Bush had his Katrina, how many other Katrinas did Bush have for the remainder of his term? They're setting this up. Now, there was a story about pig manure and slop during Katrina, and the state of Louisiana had to debunk it. There were not oozes and gobs of pig manure floating around in floodwaters in Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. They had to debunk the myth. These are predictable things that the media has in their Nexus database. Hurricane hits, you go to the Nexus file, the Nexus database, and you look for stories that might look good to run, and you run them. Just repeat them. Florence now contains sharks. So sharks are being lifted out of the Atlantic Ocean and dumped into the storm because it's so strong it's sucking them in there. And then they're going to be in the waters. Of course, the only water that might contain sharks would be storm surge. It isn't going to be raining sharks. And that's the predominant water source in a hurricane is rainfall. But now over at the Fox Business Network, and by the way, greetings and welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882. They have been running some, and this is understandable for a business channel. They've been looking at the potential financial damage and destruction that could be wrought here. And let me stress this again. I am not a weather forecasting or hurricane expert. I am an expert in debunking this whole leftist political argument of man-made climate change, but I am not a hurricane expert. I just have a lot of experience with them because of where I live. And that experience contains a lot of experience with hurricanes being misforecast, overforecast. There are two things at work here. One thing is they want everybody prepared. On the good side, they want everybody in the line of fire prepared. So at times they overplay the strength and damage to make sure everybody gets the message that something bad is headed their way. Well, this has negative side effects. This causes runs on gasoline and water and food. And so in many places in North Carolina, the shelves are empty. You can't find bottled water today or gasoline in certain places. So it has its downfall. But the political aspect, there is a political aspect to this. I have seen it. I have witnessed it. I can't tell you over how many years. And it is climate change. And there are people who, look, we're talking about the left here, folks. And it's undeniable. There are people here who are dead set on convincing everybody this hurricane is the result of climate change. And so it could lead them to overplay or exaggerate the strength, the size, and so forth. My experience has been, and it's my experience. I'm not making a comment on this hurricane. Everybody understand that? I've got witnesses here. I got people who can back me up. Of all the hurricanes that we have lived through here, 2 of them were what we were expecting. The others never got as forceful, damaging, or as big as we were led to believe. Many of them did not hit where we were told they were going to hit. They hit, but not where we were first told. My experience with hurricanes is that they are, by the way, no matter if it's a category 1, it's still devastating. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me here. But my experience is that the storms, when they finally get to where they're going, are not nearly as big and powerful and strong or as wide as original warnings lead people to believe. And I think part of that is just making sure people are ready. And it's shouting fire in a crowded theater, because even with all the news, there are people that still don't know what's coming their way because they just miss it, don't pay attention. But this one is, as it sits now and as it sat out there, if it is what they're reporting it to be, it's devastating. It's a category 3 or category 4. And the worst part of it is look at Hurricane Hugo. Hurricane Hugo, in a 24-hour period, went from the South Carolina coast all the way up to Canada. This hurricane is not supposed to, in a 24-hour period, isn't going to move 100 miles. It could dump 30 inches of rain on people if they are right about everything they're saying. There's no place that can handle 30 inches of rain without a bunch of trouble, without a bunch of damage. Now, the latest is this hurricane's starting to slow down. Well, it wasn't supposed to slow down until it reached land, according to the previous forecast. Latest is it's starting to slow down now. It was going to hit sometime late Thursday or Friday. Now it may not hit till Saturday. That could be good. If it slows and stalls offshore, that could be good, because that could contribute to weakening. Now, the Fox Business Network estimated damage cost from Hurricane Florence, $27 billion. So I have a question. Is that good or bad for the economy? $27 billion in damage means that's $27 billion in repairs. So whoever gets contracts to do the repairs, they're going to be sitting pretty. But then there are the people who are going to be losing whatever they have to lose to equal $27 billion in losses. That would be a lot of property, a lot of assets. Is this a net plus or minus for the economy? This is how political consultants look at it. And there are 700 in the forecast path of this hurricane, I think within 30 miles of landfall. 750,000 homes are at risk, with a reconstruction price on all of them at $170 billion. Now we have to start talking about hurricane or wind insurance and how hard that is to get and how expensive it is, and thus how many people have it and how many don't. And in certain parts of the country, you have to have it if you're going to live within a certain distance from the shoreline. So assuming the insurance pays off, it isn't going to be immediate. This is all going to take time. $170 billion to rebuild 750,000 homes at risk, with a total estimated damage cost at $27 billion. These are estimates that I saw on the Fox Business Channel today. So there's quite a bit at stake, and everybody's got their eyes on this, especially those that are in, because when they tell you it's going to stall and dump 30 inches of rain on you, then you have serious decisions to make as to whether you leave or not. And if you stay, where do you go to avoid 30 inches of rain in a relatively short period of time? We just sit here and hope that it's not as bad when it hits, that it's not as big, that it's not as powerful, and it's not as damaging. Now, I want to return to what I think is the big news of the day that actually hit last night. And it is encapsulated in this headline: struck page texts reveal coordinated FBI leak strategy to harm Trump. This is according to Representative Mark Meadows, Republican, North Carolina. And there are two or three different stories. There's one by Catherine Herridge here at Fox. Sarah Carter has another one out there. And even John Solomon has an opinion piece. You know, these people continue to churn this stuff out. I know people right now have books. And in many cases, their first or second book. And they really thought their book was going to make a big difference. They really thought that their books were going to open people's eyes and blow up this anti-Trump conspiracy. And I didn't have the heart to tell them that that's not going to be the impact, because I've seen it. But yet the authors of the books are all excited, and they've done the research. They've got all the footnotes. They've got all the evidence of this coup that is being run against Trump. And their book comes out, and they start doing interviews, and they don't see one story in the mainstream media about their book, about their... Selena Zito has the definitive book on who Trump voters are in the Rust Belt states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio. She's talked to them for years. She knows why they voted for Trump, why they're going to continue to vote for Trump, or if they're not, why. And she really thought that her book would help the mainstream media have its eyes opened about the things they're confused about, i.e., why is Trump so popular? Why can't we drive a wedge between Trump and his voters? And they don't care. They don't want to learn. They don't care what's in the book. They're not the slightest bit interested, because they're not interested in facts. They're not interested in anything but the agenda, the objective, which is to get rid of Trump. That's what it started out, even in the campaign, and it hasn't changed. They don't want to understand Trump voters. They want to relegate Trump voters to irrelevance. They don't care why people vote for Trump. They just want the people that voted for Trump to not count anymore when they vote. That's all they care about. The people that have written books on this coup, the silent coup, the made-up plot, the Trump dossier, the Steele dossier, all of that, thought that it would open the eyes of the drive-by media, but the drive-by media doesn't care, because the drive-by media is complicit in the coup. The mainstream media is complicit in the coup to get rid of Trump. The coup to get rid of Trump could not be happening if the media were not playing their role, which takes me to the story: struck page texts reveal coordinated FBI strategy to harm Trump, according to Mark Meadows. I was going to say, as the stories written about this are so detailed that you can get lost. I just want to sum up what Meadows is saying here. And he says the documents prove it. They've got texts from Page, Lisa Page, to Peter Strzok, that prove this. They want these texts made public and released and action taken on them. In a nutshell, the latest texts between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page reveal, expose, demonstrate, whatever, that Page and Peter Strzok were coordinating leaks to the Washington Post so as to plant the story of Carter Page and Trump-Russia collusion in the news. Do you remember going back to 2016 and 17? You'd pick up the news if you did, or you'd watch cable news, and you would hear every day at least one, and usually more than one story, citing intelligence community sources, former U.S. government officials, whatever, claiming that they had seen evidence or that they knew of evidence of Trump and Russia colluding to steal the election. No story contained any evidence. No story had any evidence because there isn't any evidence. It was all made up. And every story did contain a single line buried in the story which said, so far no evidence has yet been seen, but experts insist that Trump colluded with Russia, Russia colluded with Trump. And this happened for a year and a half. Now, at the outset of this whole year and a half of stories, there were stories about Carter Page being a spy, being on the Trump campaign team and going to Russia. It turns out the stories about Carter Page, and I think all of them, but this deals with just Carter Page. It turns out that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were leaking made-up investigative news to the Washington Post to plant a story of Carter Page being a spy for Russia and working on the Trump campaign, thereby providing the link between Trump and Russia, the collusion link. And then those news stories in the Washington Post, which essentially, to pare it down even simpler, the FBI planted false stories that Carter Page was spying for Russia as a member of the Trump campaign. The Washington Post runs the stories. The FBI then took those Washington Post stories to the FISA court and said, look, Judge, it's not just us saying it. The news media has found evidence that Carter Page is a Russian spy. Well, the Washington Post only knew it because the FBI had planted it. And that's what Meadows is asserting. They plant news in the newspaper. And then they go to the FISA court with their evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. And then they say, look, it's not just us. The Washington Post also, apparently on their own, has confirmed that Carter Page is a Russian spy. And the FISA judge eventually granted a warrant to spy on Carter Page. This is no different than the FBI using a couple of spies, Joseph Mifsud and Stefan Halper, to plant in the mind of George Papadopoulos that the Russians had 30,000 Hillary emails. Then Papadopoulos starts bragging about it. He's been given inside dope. He starts telling, like the ambassador to Australia, yeah, we know that the Russians have a bunch of Hillary Clinton emails. So Australian ambassador calls the FBI, hey, I got a guy here in the Trump campaign says that, well, he didn't know it till they told him. Apparently this was a common feature. All of these so-called stories from the intelligence community, former U.S. government officials, was all planted by the FBI, the DOJ. If you want to say the intelligence community, you can throw them in there too. And this is what Meadows says we have. Folks, this should blow the lid off of this for like the umpteenth time now. Household name in all four corners of the world, Rush Limbaugh, emitting vocal vibrations coast to coast. And we go back to the phones, Bloomington, Illinois next. Andrew, great that you... Oh, by the way, I have a claim. A parody site is claiming that the sharks in the hurricane story is not true. I don't believe it. In the meantime, Andrew in Bloomington, how are you doing, sir?
Not too bad. I'll get right to the point. Regarding the whole FISA warrant and the whole, scam going on, something that I wanted to bring up is the fact that, as every defense attorney out there has probably already figured out, if they haven't already, I imagine they're going through their clients' files and are looking for the original warrant requests on their clients, not just for involving FISA warrants, but FBI warrants across the country. Because the FBI didn't come up with this plan to take down Trump. They've been utilizing this technique, these means and methods for years, if not decades. And I think that's the real story that the FBI is scared about. The fact that there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of cases out there that could be brought down once defense attorneys start looking for the word media in these original arrests.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying the FBI didn't invent this to bring down Trump, that this has been a tactic. This circular intelligence of plant stuff in the media and then act like the media came up with it on its own to go get a warrant to spy on somebody or surveil somebody. You think this is an age-old technique that many defense lawyers are already aware of, and if this were learned and it's commonplace, they'd be held to pay.
Oh, absolutely. You look at the consequences. For example, if Strzok and Stroke...
What consequences? That's the whole point. Look, I hate to interrupt. There aren't any consequences. That's the whole thing here. There aren't any. I don't mean to be shouting here. I am wildly gesticulating here for those of you who can't see it. There aren't any consequences. There haven't been any real consequences for the 9/11 hijackers, as we have learned today. That's what's really wrong with all of this. They're getting away with this with impunity. Societal evolution. America's real anchorman Rush Limbaugh meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. You know, the more this goes on, we lose sight of the real abomination that all of this is. This entire investigation that Mueller is conducting is bogus. It is predicated on nothing but a made-up allegation for which no evidence has ever been found or cited, and therefore the investigation should never have begun. If you ask me, we're now 2 years into this investigation with Mueller's phase of it at a year and a half or close to it, 16 months, something like that. It is simply unacceptable. It ought not be tolerated that a 16-month investigation that itself is the result of the Obama labor or DOJ and FBI planting evidence and creating false claims about people. We don't know what this is about. What crimes is Donald Trump under investigation of committing? Can somebody tell me, what is the crime Trump's being investigated for committing? There isn't one, folks. There is no crime that has been mentioned as the reason for any of this investigation, even that which preceded Mueller starting. After 2 years of investigating, when there was no crime to begin with, why does this continue? It has no basis in law to continue. It has no basis in evidence to continue. Exactly what is Robert Mueller investigating Donald Trump for doing? We've said this, I don't know how many times. Department of Justice regulations involving a special counsel demand. They require. It isn't a suggestion. There must be, in order to appoint a special counsel, there must be a crime alleged to have occurred. And the special counsel is then given a charge, instructions to investigate that crime. When Mueller was appointed, no crime was specified. As such, what Mueller is conducting is not even a criminal investigation. We have a special counsel who has been allowed to be set up as essentially an ongoing check and balance on a daily basis of the President of the United States. What Mueller is doing is not mentioned in the Constitution. It's not specified. It's not referenced in any way. Our Constitution does not provide a fourth branch of government which does nothing but follow and pass judgment every day on the President of the United States. He runs the executive branch, and there isn't a single person in it who has any power over him. And yet Robert Mueller has been set up as the great overseer who has the guillotine, and he can drop it any day he wants and ruin the Trump presidency. And way too many people have accepted this premise. It is unconstitutional. It is extra-constitutional. There is no crime. Now, after 2 years of an investigation that does not have a crime in it, isn't it time to shut it down? It never should have begun in the first place. And every day it continues is a massive fraud. It's a massive fraud, and it is assault on the Constitution, not to mention the Trump presidency and the executive branch. And it is being sponsored and energized and conducted by underlings in the executive branch at the Department of Justice primarily, with friends and associates in the FBI, working with accomplices in the mainstream media to continue the illusion that some vast crime has occurred here, and we just need to keep looking to find it. Well, that's not how it works. No special counsel is given the job and said, go find a crime, except this one, except Robert Mueller. It is not a criminal investigation. That's why there will not be an impeachment. Well, I can't say that. We're talking politics here. There will not be an indictment of the President of the United States. There is no crime. No, I know. No, there was an allegation that Trump colluded with Russia. Well, collusion isn't a crime, and we've gone blue in the face saying so, but that's not even what is being looked at anymore, because if it were, we would have heard evidence, because nobody can stop leaking. We would have had all kinds of evidence, and the media would be doing orgasm after orgasm after orgasm if there were really any proof it had happened, but it didn't. So why is this continuing? It is continuing because it is what it is. It is a coup. And now with that New York Times op-ed, it's not silent. It is an out in the open, admitted to coup to get rid of Donald Trump. It proceeds without any legality. It proceeds without any substantial foundation to it. There's no reason for the Mueller investigation. There is no justifiable reason for Robert Mueller to have an office and a team of anti-Trump investigators with an unlimited budget to go run around and keep ruining people's lives and threatening to ruin the lives of others in order to get somebody to pop up and say, yeah, they know Trump cheated because he colluded with Russia. They haven't even been able to find anybody to do that yet. There isn't anybody willing to be paid enough to lie about it. The best they've got is Bob Woodward and Omarosa, whatever her name is. They don't have jack. But stop and think. There isn't even an answer to a simple question. What is Trump being investigated for? And don't tell me he's being investigated for colluding with Russia, because he's not. They're hoping to find evidence of that, but they haven't been able to because it didn't happen. There is no crime Donald Trump is alleged to have committed here. Meanwhile, we have the Obama Justice Department and the FBI corrupting themselves left and right to try to create the illusion that some crime has taken place here. The thing is, this has been going on for so long that people just accept it. Despite the abomination that it is, despite the illegality that surrounds it and defines it, despite the literal unconstitutionality of it, despite the pure bogus intent, which is to drive a president out of office and to overturn or nullify the results of the 2016 election. It's been going on so long that people have ceased looking at it, if they ever did, for what it really is. But nowhere in our Constitution does it say that we can appoint some guy to sit in daily, permanent judgment of a sitting president and to have at his disposal a guillotine to end that presidency. And that's what Robert Mueller is. And I keep hearkening back. We keep hearing that Mueller is a man of deep integrity, unchallengeable honor. I don't believe it. If he were, none of this would have been happening, and he would have rejected it. Really cared about the law? All these people really care about the law as the backbone of our society, our country, and justice, the rule of law. If they really believed it, this thing would have never gotten off the ground, and after it did, they would have shut it down. The fact that it continues is evidence that it is purely 1,000% political. It's occurring outside the system of justice in this country. It is not warranted. It is not justified. But as I say, the longer it goes on, the less people become sensitive to what it really is and just end up accepting it. That's why I think it's horrible what's happening. Mueller is just running roughshod right through the Constitution, right through the office of the presidency. And for a bunch of totalitarian authoritarians and leaning that way like the Democrats are, a precedent like this, whenever there's a Republican president, they live and die for. If you can get a special counsel appointed when there is no crime, then you can do it again the next time there's a Republican president. It will never happen when there is a Democrat president. Even with clear-cut evidence that crimes are being or have been committed, it will never happen with a Democrat president. So we have a two-tiered system of justice, which destroys our system of justice. Quick time out. We will continue after this. Don't go away.
Well, Rush, this is what I asked my wife came up with, my wife Beth. She said Hillary did it. She's the one who wrote the letter. One day that she was,
wait. You mean the New York Times op-ed?
Yeah.
The anonymous op-ed, supposedly from a Trump administration figure? You think Hillary wrote that?
I think Hillary wrote it. Actually, my wife Beth came up with that. She said that, Hillary still has her security clearance and her keys to the White House when she was co-president back with Bill, back 25 years ago. And she snuck in there one night and was sitting in the Oval Office by the desk, crying her eyes out, saying, "This should have been me. This should be my desk. This should be my office." And I think she grabbed some papers, went through, snooped around, came up with some really good stuff, hoping that they're going to invoke the 25th Amendment on him. You know, most insane people think that other people are insane, that they're the only right,
let me hold on, I need to ask you, do you really think this, or are you trying to be clever, host at home?
Well, a little bit of both.
I thought so. I'm glad, because there's no way Hillary wrote this, but you are very clever with your construction here of the possibility.
Now, I do have another comment. Stormy Daniels, she was paid off. Did she ever pay taxes on that money that's supposedly, allegedly, that
I don't
Donald
know.
Trump gave her?
Even if she didn't, nobody's going to go get her for it. That's not the way to go after Stormy. Did she pay taxes on the bribe? I don't know. That's not the way. Stormy is becoming a left-wing heroine, by the way. She's in a battle here with Serena Williams for the title. And we're tracking that. By the way, there's more on Serena Williams today. Not more on her, there's the way the media is dealing with that. We'll do that in the next hour. Okay, so I succeeded as the clever host that I am in elucidating from the caller, securing the caller. He doesn't really believe Hillary wrote the op-ed in the New York Times. She didn't. Whoever wrote this, whoever wrote it, is a millennial. You know, some of the smart money that I saw perusing things, there's some people actually think that Nikki Haley wrote it. Nikki Haley is Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. There's no way Nikki Haley wrote this, because Nikki Haley has written a response to it criticizing it. Nobody would be that double deceptive if she's got any political aspirations beyond this, which she does. There's no way. She might write it, but then she wouldn't double down and write a piece being critical of it. If that ever came out, that's the kind... bye-bye, rest of career for Nikki Haley. I don't think Nikki Haley wrote it. I stick by the fact that nobody wrote it. I believe the New York Times made it up. I think it's a composite series of opinions from a bunch of people the New York Times have on staff or talk to. I'm not denying that there are saboteurs in the Trump administration. Don't misunderstand. The timing of this, as a prelude to the Woodward screed coming out, and from everything I know, but look, they're making up quotes. Bob Woodward's partner, Carl Bernstein, still is in hiding. He can't come out and share in the glory because his name was on a story signifying Lanny Davis as an anonymous source. Lanny Davis has now admitted he lied to everybody when he sourced the story originally. I forget what it even was about now, but Lanny has said, sorry, I goofed up. I shouldn't have said it. It wasn't true. Well, CNN's the only outfit that Lanny Davis gave the data to that hasn't withdrawn it or retracted, and that's because they got to protect Bernstein's legacy and reputation. Otherwise, Bernstein would be out there defending Woodward's honor today, but he can't. He's got his own honor to try to cover up. My point is, they make stuff up all the time. Look at all of the stories for a year and a half, supposedly citing anonymous intelligence sources and former U.S. government officials assuring the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, that there was collusion with Russia, and it's only a matter of time before we can release it or something. Folks, they have been making things up for 2 years, 2.5, 3 years on Donald Trump. Why would this be any different? Again, I'm not saying there aren't any saboteurs. Don't miss it. I think there are plenty of them all over the place. Some of Trump's original staffing, as I've said, it's beyond me to make any sense of it. But I think it's the product. I think it's the result of frustration like you and I can't imagine. These people in the media, the Washington elites, what they have given this project everything they've got. The project of getting rid of Trump, overturning the election in 2016, getting his approval numbers down so low that they can drive him out of office. They have given everything. They've tried every trick in the book. They've done every trick that's gotten rid of every other Republican, and it hasn't worked. They've run through every piece of ammo in the quiver. Time for something new. Make it up. I don't know if we'll ever know. The only way we'll know is if somebody steps forward and claims credit for it. But if it was written by a saboteur in the Trump administration, they're probably not going to want to step forward anytime soon, because the conventional wisdom is it's backfired in the sense that it has given Trump evidence of what he and a bunch of us have been saying, that there is a coup, a silent coup going on to get rid of him, to get him out of office. This kind of proved it. So this person, whoever he or she is, may have stepped in it by actually doing it. They may not come forward. Back in a second. This is 3 hours in media, and look at this. 2 of them are already in the can. But we still have one exciting, busy broadcast hour to go. Some more media reaction to the outrageous treatment of Serena Williams, the U.S. Open on Saturday. Back in a moment. And look at this headline, ladies and gentlemen. Small business optimism surges to highest ever. Higher even than during the administration of Ronaldus Magnus. Small business optimism surges to highest ever. Now, what will it be if the Democrats take back the House? God forbid, take back the White House. Well, let me give you a spoiler alert. Everything going great guns economically now will tank. Democrats are bad for business. They created the need for the misery index. How many of you people have ever, you millennials don't even know what the misery index is. The misery index is a statistic that was needed to calculate how bad things were between 1977 and 1980 during the presidency of Jimmy Carter, who even he will acknowledge, if you get him on the right day, that his presidency was bad and lousy. The misery index, we had inflation at 14%, unemployment at 12%, interest rates at 15%. It was a disaster. It was absolutely horrible. We needed a misery index to tabulate it all. This is what Democrats give it. But this is actually it's just more evidence of economic news that is just unparalleled good in the lives of many Americans. Many Americans have never lived in an economy that is showing these signs of strength and growth. And there's this story, ladies and gentlemen. This is just classic. Actually, two stories. One is from last week. Actually, they're both from, one's from last week and one's from a couple of days ago. The headline from Reuters last week: Trump administration seeks to end agreement on child migrant detention. This is such a nothing burger story as well. This goes back to the allegation the media and the left made that Trump was purposely separating young children from their families at the border when they arrived at the United States for freedom and prosperity and justice. And Trump, who hates immigrants, was separating the families, and he was putting the parents in jail and putting the kids in romper rooms, and he wasn't letting them out ever. It was horrible. And none of that was true. Trump didn't order anything. Trump wasn't ordering any separation. It has been U.S. policy for years and years and years that families be separated when they arrive here illegally and when the adults are claiming asylum. And in fact, it was a ruling by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in California which reinforced this. It was a leftist idea at the time because the left believes that separated families increase dependence. And anytime you can increase dependence on government, that's good for Democrats. The Democrats are responsible for this. But Trump decided, okay, if you don't want to separate families, and I'll do an executive order saying we're going to stop it. And he did. And then the Democrats said, you can't do that. That's anti-constitutional. So last week, Reuters has this story. The Trump administration said Thursday last week it plans to withdraw from a federal court agreement that strictly limits the conditions under which authorities can detain migrant children and proposed new rules that it said would enable it to detain minors during their immigration proceedings. But that's not the deal. That's just the latest catch up on the news. The real story is this. Parents don't want their immigrant kids back. The ACLU has a problem. After fighting President Trump over separating illegal alien children from their parents, the ACLU has discovered the families don't want their kids back. The group asserted itself as lawyers for these parents, but never asked the pertinent question, do you want your kids back? The answer is a resounding no. The ACLU is learning the parents don't want their kids returning. Are you ready for this? Because the violence in parts of Guatemala is as bad as in the south side of Chicago. We're not talking about parents that have arrived here. We're talking about parents in Guatemala and El Salvador and so forth who have put their kids on the train or in the back of the flatbed and said, head to America, kid, leaving them unaccompanied. They don't want them back. They don't want them back because it's war-torn. It is rife with crime and disease. And so this idea that Trump is separating children from their families and so is a bogus thing anyway because their parents do not want them returning. In some cases, the parents are getting rid of little criminals. In addition to all of this, they're getting rid of little little hellions that are getting started in the life of crime. They're getting them out of town, getting them out of the country, don't want them. Now, that may be hard for American parents to relate to. Who would not want them? I mean, who would put their kids on a bus and say, sayonara, and don't want to see you again? But we're not like the rest of the world. Mitch McConnell. Folks, I don't know if you've heard this. There is a story that's out today. It's a story it's the result of polling data that, I pause breathlessly, says the Democrats have a real chance of taking the Senate, too. Did you know that? Yes. Not only is there going to be a red wave where the Democrats retake the House of Representatives, it looks now like the Democrats could take control of the Senate, too. So the drive-by media went to Mitch McConnell to find out the truth on this, get his take on the possibility. Mitch McConnell speaking with reporters about the upcoming midterm elections.
We know this is going to be a very challenging election. On the Senate side, I'll just list you a bunch of races that are dead even. Arizona, Nevada, Tennessee, Montana, North Dakota, Missouri, Indiana, West Virginia, and Florida. All of them too close to call, and every one of them like a knife fight in an alley. I mean, just a brawl in every one of those places. I hope when the smoke clears that we'll still have a majority in the Senate.
What is that? I hope when the smoke clears that we'll still have a majority in the Senate. Yeah, well, I hope when 6 o'clock comes tonight that I'm where I'm supposed to be. Wherever that is. What do you mean? I hope when the smoke clears that we'll have a majority in the Senate. This is shaping up just like 2016. Folks, I think one of the things about the Republicans and Washington, they believe the media there. It's their life. They're confronted by them. They're surrounded by the media every day. And I think as time goes on, and some of these guys' cases have been over decades, years at least, they just believe it. Every poll that comes out, no matter what it is, no matter what it says, no matter what the polling says, they believe it. Just like in 2016, there isn't a Republican around that thought the Republicans could win the White House in 2016. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win it. And not only that, they all thought the Democrats are going to win the House. The House Republicans, the incumbents, were not planning on being in the majority. And when Trump won, they didn't know what to do. They weren't set up for victory. They weren't planning on it. Now they were going to have to lead, and now the president was going to be a guy none of them liked. Well, not none of them, but many of them, particularly in the leadership, didn't like. I guarantee you, on election night, in many sectors of the Republican Party, there was not celebrating. They'd got it in their heads they were going to lose. And they were going to be the opposition party, and the job was going to be to try to contain Hillary like they tried to contain Obama, but that was it. As long as they keep the donors donating, saying and doing whatever they had to do for that, then that was fine. And it sounds like the same attitudes crept in here. Oh, man, I hope when the smoke clears, we'll still have a majority in the Senate. Well, hope isn't going to get it done. Voters are going to have to do, once again, it's going to come down to Republican voters, which it always does. But I want to go back to 2016, September 29th, 2016. So this is a month and a half before the election. Same place, Capitol Hill, Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, held a press conference. During the Q&A, this is what Senator McConnell said about the 2016 Senate elections.
It's pretty obvious this was going to be a really challenging cycle for us. We've got knockdown, drag out, sort of like a knife fight in a phone booth. New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois, Nevada, Indiana, Florida.
Back in 2016, it was a knife fight in a phone booth. Today, it's like a knife fight in an alley. So I guess we've moved up. We're out of the phone booth. At least we're in the alley. Got a little bit more room to conduct the knife fight. This lists the states that are too close to call where we might well lose. Now, look, I'll give the benefit of the doubt. It could well be that Senator McConnell knows all of this is a crock. The Democrats aren't going to win anything, but doesn't want to say that because he doesn't want to fire the Democrats up or do anything. The strategy might be just downplay it and let them think what they're thinking and shock them on Election Day. But I don't think that was the way it was 2016. In 2016, these people all expected to lose. Now, if Jeb, exclamation point, had gotten the nomination, then they might have thought they were going to win big. If Marco Rubio, they might have thought they were going to win big. If Ted Cruz had got the nomination, it would have been all over. They would never have thought they were going to win. With Trump, they thought, the Republicans thought they were headed to practical obscurity. With Trump winning the nomination, it could be the Republicans would lose every race because these guys thought everybody hates Trump. Oh, my God, they were embarrassed. They couldn't believe that Trump was going to be the standard bearer. And it went into election night with that as the predominant attitude. And it sounds like it's happening again. Now, it's not related to Trump per se here. Trump's not on the ballot. But it's dispiriting. But as I say, it always comes back to voters anyway. I want to share with you something written by Conrad Black, just as kind of a counterweight to this. Look, since I don't know what McConnell's strategy is here, I'm going to chalk this up to fatalism. He sounds like fatalistic. Yeah, we could lose. Look at all these races. And they're too close to call. Knife fight in the phone booth. Knife fight in the alley. Hope when the smoke clears that we're still running the show. Conrad Black has written a great book about Trump's presidency. Continues to write columns during the week about Trump and the ongoing political scene. And his latest, yesterday at American Greatness, the column titled "Pop Guns on the Left Don't Hit Their Target." I just want to give some pull quotes to this thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to share this with you because this is an entirely different attitude. This is an attitude of upbeat optimism, of being positive and confident that the Democrats are the ones that ought to be quaking in their boots and shooting themselves in the foot. First pull quote is this: "But Obama's smug, slick shtick won't cut it anymore. The country is not forgotten. The flatlined compensation levels, the tax increases, the swollen food stamp and welfare rolls, the oceanic deficits, healthcare shambles, evaporating red lines, appeasement of Iran and North Korea, disparagement of traditional Americans, and apparent indifference to rising urban violence. People have not forgotten that that's Obama." Now, in a one-on-one contest, Obama might beat Trump in an election to lead a cotillion, but in an election campaign where neither of them is a candidate like this one, Trump will tear Obama limb from limb on his record. Almost unnoticed in the din of the Democrats' campaign launch were several revelations ominous for the Democrats. There is evidence that Christopher Steele, the discredited Clinton-paid anti-Trump dossier author, even after being fired by the FBI for indiscretion, was pipelining misinformation via compromised justice official Bruce Orr to a senior member of special counsel Robert Mueller's staff. It seems clear that the president is preparing to order the release of all that the congressional committees have been demanding from the Justice Department. And a grand jury is in session hearing evidence against fired Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe and probably others. I expect that an unacceptable level of political corruption of the FBI and Justice Department under Obama will be unearthed before the election, and that the Trump media firing squad will be overcome. Their pop guns of the last 3 weeks have not moved the ball, and that's all they have. Now, that's how somebody who's looking at what's going on intelligently, reasonably, and optimistically sees things. Those people are few and far between, even in our media, even in conservative. That's the Democrats. I think Conrad's exactly right. As I watch these people, I can't imagine any reasonable person wanting to vote for any of this. And if people do, it has to be that they're dissatisfied with Trump for some reason, but it will not be performance. It won't be job performance, conditions on the ground, economic circumstances, and so forth. We hear the same thing every 4 years, every 2 years. Voters are tired of Republicans. They've made a mistake. They realize they can't wait to vote for Democrats. We heard the same thing before the 2016 election, all of it. In fact, multiply that times 2. We heard it compounded over and over again. How people couldn't wait to vote for Hillary. Trump's the biggest buffoon ever came down the pike. It's a joke. And look what happened. And ever since then, every bit of good news has been relegated to irrelevancy, and a bunch of lying things that haven't happened continue to be reported as though they have happened and so forth. I don't know. I'm with Conrad on all this, the bottom line. Quick break, back with more after this. Don't go. We have Catherine here in Hillsdale, Michigan, which is where Hillsdale College happens to be. How are you doing, Catherine?
I'm doing good, Rush. How are you?
Fine and dandy. Thank you much.
I just wanted to, first off, thank you so much, because one of the biggest reasons that I attend Hillsdale College is because my parents are both lifetime listeners of the Rush Limbaugh Show, and it was because my public school education up through high school failed me that I was looking for a real education that I could get somewhere that was based in American ideals.
You're 19. Does that mean you're a freshman?
I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore. Do you notice how well-spoken she is, folks? This is something you don't hear in American youth that much anymore. You are brilliantly well-spoken. You're articulate. You sound very confident. I'm not surprised at all that you're at Hillsdale.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about today is the importance of 9/11 and never forgetting it. Because I know at Hillsdale College, we have a lot of 19 through 22-year-old students who weren't around, or were too young like I was to remember that event. But every year we put out hundreds of American flags on our quad, and we have speakers from people who were there, who remember that event so strongly to really, sorry.
No, I understand. You basically plant a bunch of flags, and you have speakers address the student body throughout the day to explain the importance of the event and relate it to your curriculum, your education ongoing at Hillsdale. Correct?
We do, absolutely.
And no excuses are made. You're told the truth about it, and
we are.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. This is. I'm glad you called, Catherine. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your nice words. I really do. Hillsdale College it really is a throwback. It's what everybody used to think going off to college was. In fact, it may be what going off to college was, but isn't in a lot of places anymore. I'll explain what I mean when we get back from the break here. Don't go anywhere, folks. Hang on. A throwback, and it's a sad thing that it's a throwback. It ought to be what going to college is in most places. I realize not everything is going to be the same. You don't want that. But, it used to be that when it came time for your children to go to college, you sent them off to the university, and you trusted that they were going to get a well-rounded, decent American education, which included learning foreign languages. And we don't mean by that it was exclusively an American curriculum. It was going to be well-rounded, decent education. Whatever major was going to have value in the real world. It wasn't going to be peppered with a bunch of oddball, kooky distractions. And you used to be able to trust that the people that ran the university had the best interests of your kids in mind as each day went by. Now, no place like this ever been perfect, but American universities are not what they used to be, particularly when it comes to the actual education. They have become indoctrination centers, propaganda camps. They're run by left-wing radicals who are attempting to radicalize your kids. That doesn't happen at Hillsdale. They don't want to radicalize anybody. They want to teach America. They fundamentally start with the Constitution as the building block to all other education at the college. And everybody there is required to become proficient in the Constitution. They believe at Hillsdale that if there were a much wider, actual, real knowledge of the Constitution, we wouldn't have half of the social unrest that we have in this country. And I think that they're exactly right about it. But Hillsdale does more than just teach students on campus. They love education, they believe in what they teach, and they want as many people to learn or benefit as possible. Hillsdale professors see the impact of the things they teach every day in their classrooms and in the lecture halls. It's a rewarding environment for both the professors and the students. So why contain it to campus? So Hillsdale now takes the essence of select courses taught on campus. They've created online video courses for anybody interested in the subject matter. And you know what it costs? Nothing. The professors make it interesting because they are passionate about it. You see the courses online just like you would see any other video series online, on an iPad or a laptop. It's all on demand and free, courtesy of Hillsdale College. And there aren't any strings attached to this. The newest course starts next week. It's all about how our Congress was designed to work and how it works best and most effectively and why it isn't working now. Now, you may think, well, Russ, that's basic and rudimentary. You think that until you take the course. That's the point. You think you understand these things until you take the course. Everybody thinks they know what Congress does. Everybody thinks they know what the original intent. The founders wasn't setting up Congress. Well, yeah, but you're going to learn why it's not what it should be. You know, one of the main reasons Congress doesn't do much anymore, they pass it off to blue ribbon committees or they let the Supreme Court decide, because these guys have to be reelected every 2 years and they don't want controversial things hanging around their necks. So in many ways, Congress abdicates. These are the kind of things that Hillsdale wants people to learn. You can sign up right now ahead of time. Be ready to get that first installment of this new course, the new lecture. Sign up at rushforhillsdale.com. That's the website, rushforhillsdale.com. There isn't any cost, just your time and interest, with Hillsdale providing the learning experience. Here's Jim in Eagleswood, New Jersey. Sorry, this is a good point. Jim, I'm glad you called to remind me of this. What's up?
Mr. Limbaugh, I know my time is limited, but let me just tell you that next to the birth of my children, this is one of the biggest moments of my life. You are a true American. But I fear that you have fallen into a trap that has been perpetuated on most of the talk show hosts in this country.
Yeah, be very, very careful before you include me in that bunch.
I'm sorry.
Because what did I say when I introduced you? I'm glad you called to remind me of this, because I myself have said what you're going to say. I could have said, I don't need to call. I've already said it. But you've been on hold a long time, and I wanted to reward you by giving you the opportunity to say it. So, say it.
Well, the trap is this. That Bob Mueller has no intention whatsoever to ever try President Trump for anything, because you've talked about it all morning. There is nothing. There are no witnesses. There is no collusion. The only collusion exists between him and the news media to make us think that he's going after Donald Trump. He is purely cleaning up the mess since the Clintons have basically been in office.
Well, that's 95% true. They are, if they can find something in all this that they could use to send Trump packing, they would do it. But you're right. What this really is, and I've said this is why I'm glad that you called. What it actually is a cover-up of the exoneration of Hillary Clinton from real crimes that she committed. These people exonerated her in order to make sure she would remain the Democrat nominee. They did that so that she could get elected president and they would stay in their positions or gain others. And the whole point of this investigation is to cover up the crimes that Hillary committed and was exonerated for, and these people's participation and role in that.
Cleaning up Obama's mess. They're cleaning up the Iranian billions. They're cleaning up Russian uranium. They're cleaning up Gitmo. They're cleaning up 20 years worth of crap. And that's how long it takes Mueller. You think Hillary Clinton erased a lot of emails? Wait till you find out what Bob Mueller erased, because here's the trick. They do not care that you know they're guilty. They care what you can prove. And this is history since Arkansas. They don't care that you know they're criminals. They just care what you can and can't prove. And
nothing, I know that. Nothing has gotten past me. I was trying to illustrate all this by pointing out there isn't a crime that Trump has committed. There's no justification for this whatsoever. But the longer it goes on, people just accept that it's part of politics in Washington now to have a guy like this who's going to be riding herd on Republican presidents each day. And Mueller is not going away, by the way, as long as Trump's in office. If Trump runs in 2020 and gets reelected, and if Mueller hasn't been dispatched or fired or shut down, he's still going to be there, because the objective of this is to get rid of Donald Trump. Do not think that's not part of this. This is a two-pronged effort. Get rid of Trump and to cover up what these people did, exonerating Hillary. That is so important in this, folks. Hillary Clinton committed real crimes, crimes for which others who've been convicted are in prison. They revolve around her illegal private server and the trafficking of classified top secret data. And the president of the United States was doing so with her, knowingly, even though he has lied and said he didn't know she was using a private server until he saw it on the news. But that's not true, because her email address did not have .gov on the end of it. It was a private email. He knew. They all knew. And so it was time to get in gear. Whether it was Trump or anybody, they would still have done what they had to exonerate Hillary Clinton. She was the Democrat nominee. That was preordained. Crazy Bernie was blowing against the wind. And no matter what he did, he wasn't going to get the nomination. She was it. She had committed crimes. All of them were on her team. They wanted to maintain their jobs or get promotions. She had to be cleared. She had to be exonerated by the highest authorities in the land, and they set out to do that. And Comey officially made it happen on July 5th of 2016, and reaffirmed it later on in October of that year. And so everything that was done to exonerate Hillary is being covered up in this investigation, so-called, of Trump, for which there is no crime being pursued. There was no crime specified. Donald Trump has not committed a crime. Hillary Clinton committed many. And not just the server. The crimes that Hillary Clinton committed in dealing with Russians and Christopher Steele and collecting all this so-called opposition research on Trump, and the potential criminality of lying to FISA court judges in order to get warrants to spy on people who were not spies. And then the question becomes, everybody's asking, why aren't the FISA judges ticked off? They've been lied to. The FBI, these people went up there and lied to them. What if the FISA judges are in on it? What if they don't care? We're talking about the Washington swamp. There's a lot of things that don't have any rational explanation. And when that happens, that's when people start conjuring up weird stuff. In the real world, a judge who is lied to by any lawyer to get a search warrant or worse, that lawyer is in big trouble once the judge finds out he's been lied to. Well, these FISA judges were obviously lied to, and they may have taken action against these lawyers that we don't know about. But because we don't know it, if they have, we're left to assume that everybody involved in this got away with it and continues to get away with it. And the Mueller investigation is to ensure that they do get away with it. So I have no doubt that that's what this is about. But there's also a large part of it getting rid of Trump at the same time. It would be a twofer. But just because there's no crime and just because there's no this or that doesn't mean that they're not really trying to get rid of Donald Trump, because they most certainly are. The Serena Williams piece, I may have to hold this over to tomorrow, but it's from the Atlantic magazine. The headline, Serena Williams' U.S. Open loss was humiliating, but not for her. No, of course not for her. Of course not. No, it was humiliating for the referee, who was racist. The problem is both contestants were African-American females. One was part Japanese, but they both were minorities. What do you mean the chair referee was racist and sexist when both contestants were female? Anyway, over the last couple of months, FBI agents and several law enforcement agencies have nabbed 74 alleged cyber criminals for schemes designed to hijack wire transfers. What they were doing were redirecting money from businesses and individuals into their own accounts. The bad guys in this case were luring victims to websites using emails and presenting fake website pages that mimicked real web pages. They sent millions of emails to unsuspecting people offering this fast new wire transfer service. Chances are you might have gotten one of their notes without realizing. If you don't do a lot of wire transfers, you probably ignored it. But they had mass distribution on this scam. Cyber crimes only get more and more elaborate. At the heart of most of them is the premise of stealing online identities and personal information while submitting you what appear to be very legitimate requests for that information. When computer hackers get hold of that kind of data, they're able to sell it over and over again, not just once. Sell it on the dark web, sell it here, sell it there. It's why you need the protection of LifeLock's identity theft protection. Their sophisticated computer programs are constantly scanning billions of online transactions every day, looking for evidence that your identity is being used illegally and without your knowledge. And they can do that. And when they see it, they're in touch with you quickly, texting and calling and emailing to get your attention so that you can confirm or deny that you are responsible for what appears to be weird activity. And if it's not you, they are quick to move to try to shut it down, and they have their restoration team ready to go to put you back together. LifeLock's new plans have the power of Norton security software for your hardware, protects against ransomware and malware on your devices. Sign up today with LifeLock, folks. If you haven't done it, there's no reason to wait, because all of this is becoming more and more common. When you use my name in the sign-up process, you'll get a 10% discount and a $25 Amazon gift card. It's LifeLock.com or 800-440-4833. That's 800-440-4833. Remember to use my name. Donald in Orange County, California. Quickly, how you doing, sir?
Hi, Trump. Hi, Trump. Hey, listen, Hillary did not erase the emails. She kept copies of the incriminating emails that she has on everybody, and that's why they all are protecting her. It's the only thing that makes sense. Democrats, Republicans, DOJ, FBI, they have to protect her to keep her silent. She has the proof. She's not stupid. She kept it. She did not erase it.
Wait a minute.
That's just the point I want to...
What? Proof of what?
In other words, everybody going through that server, every dirty deal that went down, she came through that server. They all thought she was going to get reelected. Nothing would ever come out. But when it didn't, and she did not erase it. She's not stupid. She kept incriminating evidence from everybody and all the emails, all the payoffs, everything went through that server. So now it's the only thing that makes sense. Why do they all square? Yeah, Ray Charles can see that she committed crimes. They won't do anything because she has proof and she can put them all in jail. That's what's going on, I believe.
I find this fascinating. And what this is a holdover. People of a certain age have this impression of the Clintons. when they were in office, there was this story that they had 500 FBI files on people, members of Congress, Republicans, members of the media. And they were blackmailing people left and right. And that's how they got away with everything. And this sounds like a continuation of that. They moved on from 500 FBI files to every bit of dirt that anybody in the Obama administration ever did. Hillary's got it in her emails. She didn't erase them, and she can nail anybody anytime she wants. And so they've got to go to the end of the earth to protect her. I don't think that's what's going on, but if it were, I wouldn't be surprised. But I think there's much more happening here than that.
Doing the work that the mainstream American media just won't do. Rush on the EIB.
Damn it, now I forgot the big story. They've been orgasming all day that Trump's approval number in their poll is down to 36%. I meant to mention this at the time. And the reason they say that Trump's number has fallen from 44 to 36 because the way he treated McCain when McCain died. That's their excuse. I'm sorry I forgot that, but I at least got it in here. See you tomorrow.